Welcome to the Faculty Focus podcast, live from our annual Faculty Research Day with your hosts
Marleen
and
Teun,
highlighting the research of our professors and PhD researchers. Hi again. Now joining us on the podcast is PhD researcher Celeste Laureyssen. Her topic of today is Beyond the Usual Suspects, genetic exploration of Alzheimer's disease hallmark and co-morbid neuropathological lesions. Hi, welcome to the podcast. Can you briefly introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, sure. So I am Celeste. I actually studied here at the University of Antwerp throughout my bachelor's and my master's. I studied Biomedical Sciences and I did Master Neurosciences. I chose this because I have always had a great interest in Alzheimer's disease. So I did my bachelor thesis on biomarkers of Alzheimer's disease and then my master thesis on the gut microbiome that is involved in Alzheimer's disease as well. And now I am a PhD student at the lab of Celeste Laureyssen here at the VIB Center for Molecular Neurology. And now I work on neuropathological lesions and how genetics plays into them in Alzheimer's disease.
All right, so the Alzheimer's disease is actually really a threat throughout your career so far.
Yes.
All right.
I made a small side step. So when I graduated with my master's, I went to the industry for 7 months.
Okay.
I worked at Johnson & Johnson in an R&D lab, and there I worked with material sciences, so everything more like physics stuff.
But then you saw an opportunity to come back as a PhD researcher.
Yes, I always had the intention to do a PhD, but I felt like after I finished with my master thesis, I didn't really feel passionate about that particular topic. So I decided to take a break and go to the industry and see what opportunities were out there. And then I came across this vacancy at Celeste Laureyssen lab, which really spoke to me. So I applied and I got the job, and that's where I'm now.
It was a good match.
Yes, a very good match. Yeah.
All right, wonderful. So picture you're chatting with a super curious 10-year-old who loves science. How would you explain what you do all day and the cool topic of your research to him?
That's a difficult question. Well, I'd start with that I study the brain and everything that can go wrong with the brain.
Yeah.
Because it can happen, for example, with a 10-year-old, that they talk to their grandparents and sometimes the grandpa, grandmother forget something. Then I look into how this is happening and what is happening in the brain that makes them forget something, and if we can find targets to maybe help them in the future.
Right,
they can.
That's very clear.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very well said. Yeah. Well, for those who struggle to tell the different types of dementia apart, can you briefly explain what defines Alzheimer?
Well, so basically dementia is like a big collection term for different kinds of neuropathological events that happen. So Alzheimer's is the largest cause of dementia worldwide. And it is defined by tangles and plaques in the brain. So tangles are aggregates of neurofibrillary tau protein inside the neurons, and plaques are aggregates of amyloid protein outside of the neurons.
Which inhibit or make the function less?
In the general accepted theory is that they cause neuroinflammation, and this leads eventually to the death of neurons, so neuronal loss and shrinking loss of the neurons in the brain, and then this leads to the symptoms.
All right. And why is it so difficult to diagnose Alzheimer?
Because the symptoms largely overlap with the other types of dementia. For example, a patient, even symptoms of depression can overlap with symptoms of Alzheimer's disease.
Okay, and that's really a disease of the time?
Yeah.
So it's even more difficult now than maybe 20 years ago then.
Yeah, and another aspect is that the lesions that I just told you about are not the only thing that happen in Alzheimer's disease. When you look at the brain of a person that is diseased or has died of Alzheimer's disease, there are a lot of other things going on. For example, you can see alpha-synuclein aggregates, and this particular protein is actually the protein that misfolds in Parkinson's disease. Okay. So you can often see these diseases together. We call this mixed dementia. So it's very difficult for a clinician to actually define this is Alzheimer, this is something else.
So that's why looking at the genetics of it all can maybe help for a diagnosis. Yeah. All right.
And is it because it's so difficult to make the right diagnose, it's difficult to treat it? Is that one of the reasons?
It is one of the aspects. Because what is happening now on a genetic level, they use large-scale studies with people that have been clinically diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. But yet there can be a lot of heterogeneity in this because these people don't all have Alzheimer's disease necessarily. They can be misdiagnosed, and the controls they use could also be people that will develop Alzheimer's disease later on because it's a big spectrum. The symptoms of Alzheimer's disease can start even 25 years after the pathology already started in the brain. So it's very difficult to get a good study population. And that's the value of having a neuropathological cohort because you can actually see what is happening in the brain so you know what you're dealing with.
Okay.
All right. And which of the discoveries do you think was the most crucial in moving towards a cure? Discoveries on the different things we know already that's happening in Alzheimer's disease?
Well, for now, I think the main therapeutic interventions that are happening are targeted on amyloid, which is actually the first part of the pathology
that was known.
That was known, and that starts to go wrong. But I think of it more as a first step.
Yeah.
And I think Alzheimer's should be approached a little bit like cancer because it's such a heterogeneous disease, and Alzheimer for one person can be the typical hallmarks, and the other person has co-pathologies, and targeting only amyloids doesn't really solve the symptoms these people have, because in these clinical trials you see the amyloid load decreasing, but these patients still experience a lot of symptoms and they don't really seem to improve that much.
Okay.
So it's only a start.
And a real challenge as well.
Yes, that for sure.
Yeah. Well, I've seen in your abstract that you use a hypothesis-free approach in your research.
Yes.
Yeah. What is it actually, and why is it important?
So we look hypothesis-free to be able to discover new genes, because we have a lot of genes that are related to Alzheimer's disease, like ApoE, which is the strongest known genetic risk factor for sporadic AD. But there is more going on, because these big clinical studies that I told you about, they discover lots of genes, but they could also be mapping to other types of dementia, like frontotemporal lobar degeneration, Parkinson's, and so on. And by looking at the pathologies, we can see which genes are actually causing a person to have these kind of co-pathologies, and then we can better understand the pathways that are involved, so we could actually maybe target this.
Okay, so it's more looking with an open mind and seeing what comes out of it.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, well, it sounds very promising, so I'm crossing my fingers already. Well, if you had a crystal ball that could predict the future, what would it say about Alzheimer's disease and the chances of a cure being available by the time we retire?
It's difficult to say. I wish I had.
It will be a very nice pink crystal ball, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, that would be great.
Okay.
But I think for now, we're still a long way from a definite cure. So research is advancing. There are a lot of different fields that are coming together. And well, I was at this conference in Philadelphia earlier this year, and we see a lot of different presentations about people who are going for targeted immunotherapy for tau pathology. So there is really movement in the field at trying these combined therapies.
Yes, yeah.
So there is for sure advancement, but I don't think there is an actual cure readily available in the near future.
No. All right, well, but we already know that a lot of good people are working on it.
Yes,
so that's
exactly.
comforting.
It's moving forward, but it's going slow.
Yeah, well, a lot of things are going slow, but in the end we'll get there, I hope. Well, you chose one of the most complex organs in our body, the brain. What drew you to it?
Well, I've always been fascinated about how the brain works. I think a lot of people are asking questions about this and want to know more. For me, it was specifically because in my bachelor thesis, I really got drawn to Alzheimer's disease. Yeah. The group I was working on, I was really fascinated by what they did and how they approached it, because they were also building a biobank, which is, I think, also really crucial to have, because we need to have these study populations to be able to...
Well, I see Teun leaning forward. Can you explain the biobank principle maybe a bit?
Well, the biobank actually collects biofluids from people, so blood, plasma, CSF, which is cerebrospinal fluids, but also brain tissue. Okay. And this is actually like a central hub that provides material to different research groups. Yeah. So if a person donates their brain or their bodily fluids, then actually a lot of good things can come out of this, because we can do a lot of different types of research from this. And so this is one of the crucial parts in not only Alzheimer's research, but...
And in advancing maybe a bit quicker.
Yes, the bigger the study populations, the more data we can gather, the faster we can understand what's going on and can treat it.
Yeah, all right. How was your PhD journey so far?
So I think at first it can be a bit intimidating to start a PhD because you need to, or like you hear all these different kinds of stories of people that suffer from burnout or that get stuck on a certain point, because it's really an experience where you have to learn how to deal with things going wrong.
True.
Because it's really a trial and error situation. You start on this project, you have to figure it out, often from scratch. So you have to learn how to deal with negative things happening. But it's also very rewarding, because it really teaches you perseverance and also gives you a lot of good connections with your teammates. Like, for example, me and my team, we often go out for drinks, and it's really an experience. Yeah. And I would recommend everybody who is really interested in like diving deeper into a subject and feeling like they have a connection to research to just try it, and don't be afraid of things going wrong. It's normal, and
failure
in the
is
end,
a big part of it.
Failure is a big part of it, yes.
And be flexible?
I think it really depends on the group where you are also. But for me, it's very important to maintain a good work-life balance, because I have horses at home, which requires a lot of outside, like a lot of extra time taking care of them. But
also rewarding.
But also difficult.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to maintain a good life. It's like whatever hobby you have to be able to keep doing this to maintain your mental health, because it's challenging, and a lot of PhD students suffer from mental health disease. So it's really important to find a place where you really feel like you have a good connection with your PI, with your teammates, like that there is room.
Yeah, and maybe that's a more personal thing, but if it's not going right, there is a faculty ombudsperson for PhD research.
Yes, I'm aware.
Well, it's me. So any questions are welcome. Well, all right. Thank you for sharing your story, Celeste.
Thank you very much, and good luck with your presentation this afternoon.
Thank you.
We'll be cheering from here.
And with your PhD,
That's great.
When do you finish your research?
Technically in a year, but we're already looking into an extension of half a year, because my project really got off to a slow start because I had to build my own cohort. So we're now just getting to the interesting part where we get all the results, and I really want to take it to the end. So,
all right.
as long as it takes.
Good luck with that.
Good luck, and thank you.